wasn't living the life and treating myself or others the way that I wanted to. And that led me on a basically a 25-year journey of working on myself and helping other people. And it included, a big part of that was working on my shadow, because I didn't want to project things. I realized like how much the stuff I hadn't dealt with or didn't know about was coming out subconsciously, unconsciously, into my relationships, into the way I treated myself and my body and my soul and spirit, the planet, and to the people I loved and cared about, and to everyone. I saw how judgmental I was. I saw critical, just many things. And I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be loved. And I knew that was my value. As a little kid, I was one of those sensitive boys that would come home from school and say, why are people so mean? And I didn't understand, because why didn't we just all like get along and love each other? And that's what I wanted for myself. I mean, and that quote, be the change you wish to see in the world, like, I know it started with me, so I wanted to do the work. So I went 25 years, which included psychedelics, lots of other things, but it led me to vibrational and energy work and like seeing differently. Pharmaceuticals didn't help me, made things worse, both emotionally, mentally, and physically. And so through all the things that I did to work on myself, it led me to things like this. So when I saw this, I said, like, this to me is what I would like to help bring more of to the world. So we can do our shadow work, and we don't have to like project our shadows onto everyone else, and we can actually live in a world like that say the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. I don't know knows that saying, but Charles Eisenstein, I think. But that's just like being that change. And so to have the chance today to work with Robert and Roger and bring these to North America, to the United States, and really, get this out to people as another tool to help us to be who we want to be and have the greatest lives we possibly can live, and have the greatest relationships, not just with ourselves, but with everybody in our life and the planet. And so with that, that's why this means the world to me. And these guys mean the world to me because they're the ones that have helped bring this to this planet. So I'm going to turn it over to Roger now.
Thanks, Ken. So, I'll keep it brief because Robert gets a little, I don't want to say embarrassed, but he's very humble about himself and the work that he's done. He's published tens of books, dozens of books. It's just so louder. Sorry. Yeah. So Robert's published dozens of books, everything from clinical herbalism to functional medicine and human clinical trials, the fungal pharmacy. If you're not aware of that book, I highly recommend you get it if you're interested in mushrooms. But when I was in college, I went to college for sustainable agriculture and food production in Vermont, and I used a bunch of Robert's books in writing my papers when I was in school. So getting the chance to be here in Telluride and talking to a room full of you that are, passionate about mushrooms, and it's kind of surreal getting to work with Robert and being here in Telluride. And I was, a little bit of my history and why I'm here in the functional medicine space and working with energetics. I was very sick as a child. I was a patient of Children's Hospital in Massachusetts for over a decade. I was on a plethora of pharmaceutical drugs for over 12 years of my life, and I was just getting constantly sicker and more depressed. And when I got to college, I started playing around with functional medicine, functional mushrooms, which led me to reishi, which changed my life. Had my first psychedelic experience at 18, which was, as most of us know, pretty life-changing. And I was able to feel compassion for myself and forgiveness for everything that I went through, and stopped with the self-pity and all this negative self-talk that I was experiencing for over a decade of my life. And that led me to vibrational medicine. So if anyone's familiar with, everything from binaural beats, flower essences, I was using flower essences for about a decade. And when Robert was published his book, I pre-ordered it on Amazon immediately, and just kind of nerded out about that. And when Ken and I had our first conversation starting Fruiting Bodies together, we each had our own mushroom business prior to Fruiting Bodies. And we talked for like 7 or 8 hours on Zoom one night. It was just like we hit it off so well, and a good portion of that was about mushroom essences and it being one of our dreams to bring this to the world. So working with Robert now really is a dream come true. We couldn't be happier here today to be talking about these mushroom essences. So thank you.
So, thank you. So the schedulers have booked me that I have to be at the Opera House at 12 o'clock, talking on another talk. So I thought I had a half-hour break, but I don't. So about 10 minutes before the hour, I'm gonna have to boom out of here, so I apologize in ahead of time. So these guys can answer follow-up questions. So just a little bit about myself with regards to mushroom essences, just to give you. So I've been an herbalist for 52 years. I was at the university, a clinical professor for 12 in family medicine. When I put out the fungal pharmacy in 2011, I was the only person who published that year, and so they had a little wine and cheese, and about the other 60 faculty in that department. And as I'm walking out of at the evening, and I was feeling pretty good about it, publishing a book that took me 10 years to put together, and I'm walking out, and this colleague beside me, who I thought was a friend, or at least it was a close acquaintance, he comes up, he says, Robert, he says, that's not really a medical book. And I didn't know whether to laugh or punch him in the nose, so I laughed. But anyways, my story goes back. When I was 6 years old, my uncle, who fought in the Korean War, came home, and he had tuberculosis. And as it happened, I think because I was a sensitive child, I also contracted it. And they gave me 10 times the amount of antibiotic. They missed a decimal point, or they didn't know, or whatever. But anyways, I had an experience with that where I lost a lot of this hair. This is not all, like from being an old guy bald, but you can imagine a 6-year-old that doesn't have any hair on all this part of their head. Anyways, the bottom line is, for whatever reason, I didn't know, but in our backyard, my mom had a whole flower garden, and she had all her canning jars under the back porch. And so for some reason, I filled those jars with water, and I was putting flowers in them, putting them out in the sun, then tucking them away, and then bringing them out in the day and drinking them. And I didn't know that I was giving myself flower essences. And it is truly true that when you're 6 or 7, your spiritual nature comes to you. And those who are paying attention to that when they're young, it really makes their life easier because they have a bit of a pathway of what's to be. And so later on, my mom wanted me to be a medical doctor. I'm 18, and my dad gave me this choice: you can go to university, be a doctor, or, and you can stay at home for a while, room and board, or go and work. University sounds way easier. Anyways, I did 2 years pre-med, hated it, finished a degree in botany, hitchhiked around South America for a year, almost died several times. And then, friends of mine, 6 friends I'd always been raised urban. And so we went up north, a little hippie commune, the old days, early 70s. Built a log cabin, didn't know how to do that, found out how to do that, how to fish, how to garden, how to wildcraft, and started to realize that all the plants in northern Alberta, in Canada, there were no books about how they were useful. And so over the last 50 years, I've written about, I know about 600 plants really well, let's put it that way, anyways. And I've written a few books on the subject. I think, by the way, a little shameless plug. If you like lichens, you're lichen and lichens. Inner Tradition is putting out my medicinal lichen, indigenous knowledge, and modern pharmacology in February. It's coming out this winter, and you might love it. The pictures in it are like outstanding. You'll love it. If you like lichens, you'll like it. So anyway, while I was there, I met a young woman, got married, divorced, and my house burned down in about 6-month period of time. And I realized that maybe I'm not really paying attention. I thought I was, but it really wasn't. And so I started taking flower essences. I sent to England for a little kit, the Bach flower remedies at the time, little 32 pounds. I sent off, and I got these little 2 dram little bottles. And anyways, and they helped me. I went, wow. And so as I developed and I studied, British Columbia, Alert Bay, California School, Spain, England, and then 2-year apprenticeship with a curandero on the coast of Peru, I was ready to do a clinical practice. So I came back to Edmonton. My dad had died, my mom was there, and so I started a clinical practice, and I started integrating not only herbs, but flower essences into my practice. And I was pretty happy with, and we're going back in the 80s now. And so, moving a little ahead, in 1990, I ran into this guy from the Netherlands who had produced one mushroom essence. Wow, the light bulb went off. And I spent the next 26 years developing essences from different, I started out with about 65, and I've narrowed it down to the 48 that are presently there. And I had the great opportunity, because as I helped people with their herbal issues, I could talk enough of them into experimenting with the mushroom essences, what I had discerned they may be about, to take them, keep a journal for 28 days, get back to me. And as they told me, as in the journal, like if you are in clinical, sometimes one word like pops out, and you go, whoa, okay, and then you can explore that. And so then basically, and a real fan of Carl Jung, I'm really into shadow work, I'm really into depth psychology. And so as I kept going with the flower essence, I said, these are great. They bring light into areas of dark. But what is out there that can actually take us and help us feel comfortable in the dark? Because if you don't want to go in that cave, I get it, it's kind of scary, right? I mean, it takes guts to do that. Could I just hit the book for a second?
Please.
So this is how it intros, and this is just before Trump got elected. And let's hope we don't repeat that. Western civilization has an aversion to shadow work, but why? The answer is that there is hard, honest work involved. As a consequence of this aversion, we now have a modern society run, for the most part, by adolescent males. If this does not frighten you, it should. Many of the major decisions regarding public policy, governance, and our legal system are discussed, written up, and written into law by immature and juvenile egotists. So that's how it starts. So anyways, 26 years later, after discerning, and by the way, all these mushroom essences are done under lunar influence. I really believe that solar is a whole different energy. And one of my early books back I wrote like 50 years ago was Sun Dew, Moon Ward, because I've always loved that yin yang kind of thing, right? And so I approached my publisher. He had just published a couple of books for me, including Fungal Pharmacy. And so Doug said, I wrote Doug, and he said, what are you up to, Rob? And I said, I got this book on mushroom essences. And he says, what are those? And I explained a bit. He says, I don't think so. I said, well, I said, I have a board meeting tomorrow, the whole editorial board. I'll see what they think. And he wrote me back and he said, not a chance. Nobody's interested. Nobody wants to buy a book like that. And so I said, okay, I'll tell you what. If you don't get back to me on Monday, I'm going to self-publish, because I have done that. And he said, okay. By no coincidence, right, there are no such things, he and his family went to the Sierra Nevada to hike for the weekend. And as they came up over a rise, there were 13 herbalists sitting in a circle with a crystal bowl in the middle. And he walks down, and they said, and he came up to them, one of them turned to him and said, and he asked, what are you doing? And he said, well, we're making a flower essence. And then Doug, who didn't know anything about those either, he goes, he says, well, what do you think about mushroom essences? And simultaneously, all 13 turn and look at him and go, where do you get those? Yeah, and he says, okay. And on Monday he came back and said, okay, we'll publish it. And then they sent me, so they finally agreed. And anybody who's published a book knows how long and arduous that whole editorial blah blah is. But at the end, they sent me 6 different covers for this book that were terrible. Like they didn't say anything, right? And then so, you guys all familiar with Taylor Lockwood's work?
Yes.
Yeah, so he had this mushroom in National Geographic, it's a bioluminescent from the Amazon, it's not from here. And I said, I said to North Atlantic, I said, if you can get permission, that's what I want for the cover. Because it's black, it's dark, it's, brings whatever, and I think it's perfect. I mean, it's a perfect cover. And anyways, the bottom line is, over the last 8 years, people here and there have found it. I've sent kits all over the world. And I get feedback all the time, so I could also, I could really do a whole, but the bottom line is, I'm a busy guy. This is one thing I do. I have other things in life that interest me, and I'm in 65 books later, so. But the bottom line is, I don't really want to be in charge of, packaging up and mailing off mushroom essences to people. And in Canada, just to send them across the border here is a ridiculous amount of money for one essence. I'm not interested. Unfortunately, I met these two wonderful guys who are, have been willing to, they're going to work with the mother stock and they're going to be producing the essences, and they did a beautiful job of new labeling and all that stuff. And so I'm very grateful that, we can start to move some of this information out. Because I don't know about you, but I, at times, feel kind of sad or distressed a bit about what our incredible democratic society has become. And the only way you can change anything is to change yourself. I've learned that. Like, I spent, 12 years in family medicine trying to believe that I could really make an influence and we could have an integrative healthcare system. I assure you, after 12 years, that's not going to happen. There's a biomedical model that believes that they need to intervene, that they need to give you something that your body doesn't have to cure you. And then there are people like myself who believe we have the intrinsic veritas capability of healing ourselves. And that twain will never meet. It's just the way it is. And so I'm really, I think it's interesting. Those of you who are interested, please explore it. I think you might find it very interesting. I gave a case study, at least, or one or two, in the book to give you some direction. There's a nice little thing at the back that you can pin down. For example, addiction. Addiction is a serious problem in our society, but people think, oh, addiction, they talk about drugs. No, I'm talking about sexual addiction, alcohol addiction, gambling addiction. There's a whole television addiction, right? There's a whole swath of addictive behaviors that are preventing us from really, truly feeling our own sense of freedom. Nobody can give you freedom except yourself, and it's all an internal issue. But a lot of people feel trapped by the way they were raised as a child. Let's say you were raised in a very religious household. Like a joke, my wife, who allowed me, I met her when I was 40, I'd given up meeting the right woman. I thought, yeah. And then she walked in my door one day, and that was it, kind of. And we've been together happily for 34 years, and so I'm always grateful. But the reality is, if we are always projecting our own shadow on other people, it will just generally be reflective right back to us. You've all experienced that, right? Like a few times, right? Yeah, and so the bottom line is you'll keep repeating that pattern. And that pattern is like a prison. It's not allowing you to really fulfill your full potential. And I really believe everyone has something amazing to contribute. Like when I come to a festival like this and I go around the booths and I meet different people, it fills me so much because I see how creative and how deep understanding and how people have really worked to get to this point in their life. And it just makes me very appreciative. And I kind of have this dream that maybe we could have a bigger society that is like Telluride weekend. That's what I think. So I'll leave it at that for this moment. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
do wanna, I'll mention, before we take, start taking questions, we'll take questions as long as, the Robert leaves, and then we'll continue, answering whatever we can, but this book is amazing. I probably gifted this book over 100 times, probably my most gifted book. And it really is, and you can make your own too. I mean, we have the really great crafted, obviously, essences from the seed for that Roger has created and Robert has created, and Roger has expanded and made available, that we make available now. But, you know, I started making my own after going and doing the workshop, and then using the first one I did, I started making my own and helping not just myself, but other people with them. Because I was doing a lot, obviously, with addiction and other things, and I was at too many funerals, too many people that I, you know, beautiful people, just the most beautiful people, and I just saw, you know, what's happening, and I wanted to bring something that could make a difference for them and their families, so this is, I wanted to say that Robert is gonna be kindly at our booth, tomorrow from 10 to 11. We do have this book available. Obviously, we have the essences available too, and also the integration space. If you haven't been there, highly encourage. It's amazing what they have here, and we have our essences that you can try there and sample at the integration booth also. But from 10 to 11, Robert will be there signing the books, so you can pick them up then, or you can pick them up, you know, today if you're interested. And if you're interested, you know, we obviously have information. The way I like to do it is I said, we have, Roger, this beautiful list of essences that kind of describe a little bit of what each one does. Pass that around, yeah. And I say, like, which one resonates with you? Like, there's gonna be one that probably really stands out for whatever is going on in your life. I had somebody yesterday who got one and then shared the picture of this with their sister who wasn't here, and, you know, she found one that resonated, and they're gonna do it together, this 28-day cycle. They're gonna start on the full moon that's coming up, and do that cycle. And hopefully eventually we'll have online, set up like online talks where people can come and with other people, like integration circles, and talk about, you know, with other people who are using these, how they're, you know, what they're experiencing, you know, what they're, you know, so just so you know you're not alone. So those are things we hope, but I say it's an amazing book. The first, I mean, the first two chapters, the beginning, the introduction, which Robert read, and the first two chapters, like, are so, like, if that doesn't get you wanting for yourself and for others, and really, like, you know, having the lives you guys all, like, that's what I want. Like, that's my passion. That's been my passion. Actually, it's Robert that when I was at that workshop and he spent that day talking to me about functional mushrooms too, is what led me, because I was just growing gourmet. I understood functional, but I didn't recognize what was going on in the industry, and after spending that time with Robert, it changed my life in the way I was helping myself and other people, and led me to Roger and getting to work with him, which is an incredible honor also. So with that, I just want to open it up to any questions you have. Robert is still with us on the essences.
And I'll take your question in a second. I just want to add things. Sorry, yeah. So back in 2010, just before they published the fungal pharmacy, and thank you everyone who's purchased one of those and supported that work. I really very appreciate it. I decided I was spending a month in Palm Springs, because February, I think, because, you know, northern Canada can be a little brutal. like this winter, we had 2 nights of minus 52 Celsius, and the first time in 26 years a water pipe broke. I mean, that's how cold it was. But anyways, so Palm Springs, you know, the pool, having a margarita around the pool, you know, reading a trash novel, you know, and I could only do that for so long. And then I had this thought, you know what? I was thinking about the alchemical patterns. There's seven stages to alchemy, right? And so I thought, oh, and so this is you can take this with a grain of salt. So anyways, I sat out there with Negro Modelo and headphones on, listening to AC/DC. And I wrote this alchemical, a fungal alchemical process of the 7 stages of how mushrooms actualize themselves. And I wrote that in the fungal pharmacy, and then it's also in the front of this book as well. And anyways, that's how that developed. And my wife, who is my greatest critic and supporter, she goes, Robert, she says, that's the best thing you've ever written. So 65 books later, she goes, that's your best writing. So I kept thinking, well, maybe more Negro Modelo, maybe. Which they changed the formula. It's not as good as it used to be. Or maybe more AC/DC, I don't know. Because I always listen to blues music when I write. For some reason, the blues just kind of calm me to the point where I can do some writing. And I still to the day write 2 hours a day, 9 till 11, knock it off. And if any of you are struggling with writing, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, I think what I've learned is that if you try to force it, it's more difficult and you'll make more editing mistakes. So pick a time when your brain is like, you know, maybe after 2 coffee or something like that, and just sit and do it and then step away, even if you're tempted to go further. And you know, if you do 2 hours a day, you'll get a lot done writing, right? That's what I think it is. The other side is my wife, who was into astrology when she was 14. She contributed to the book as well, because I said, well, I want to do this mushroom essence. What would be a favorable astrological influence? And so she contributed that. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that when you make your own essences, but I've done them under different phases, waxing or waning or full, and it does make a difference. Yeah, depending on the issue you're dealing with. I mean, people will often say, oh, the full moon doesn't bother me. Really? Like, how attention are you paying? Right, so lunar influence, yeah, so sun, you know, there's a great cartoon on Facebook. There's these Spanish conquistadors are coming up to these, I think, Southern American indigenous tribe, and they're standing beside each other. They're telling, you know, this indigenous group about how they should accept, you know, Jesus Christ into their life, and that Christianity is where it's at, and you know, they should get away from celebrating all, you know, celebrating the sun and the moon and all that stuff. And one of the guys in the tribe goes, hey, at least the sun's real, dude. So you had a question? Yeah.
So I'd love to have experienced the vibrations, because like a plant has a different vibration than the flower on it. Does the mycelium have a different vibration than the mushroom on it?
Yes. The answer is yes. And so, for example, my greatest challenge was shaga, which, by the way, if you're drinking shaga tea every morning because it's kind of groovy and fad, please don't do that. Because there is reason to believe that the oxalic acid in shaga over time not only has harmed people's kidneys, but killed a few people. And if Fungi Magazine wrote an article about that a few years ago. So I think shaga has potential, not one human clinical trial yet, love to see it. Is it sustainable? That's another question. But anyways, the bottom line is shaga, yes. I made an essence with it, and it didn't, you know, it was okay, like from the sclerotia, right? And then one day, I stumbled upon, the first time in my life, and the only, where I saw a fallen birch tree with a shaga with a fruiting body on it. There are little how many of you have seen the little microscopic fruiting bodies? One other person. You're lucky, right? I mean, it's very exceptional. And it really bothers me in the scientific literature that they always say shaga fruiting body. No, it wasn't. It was the sclerotia. It's a sterile conch. But I combined those two, and unbelievable the energetic of that by combining those two. So it's always been a process. The whole thing, like I say, it took me 26 years, not every day, but it is one of those things that you can all enjoy and do for yourself. And actually, I get a lot of emails around the world where people are taking their bioregional mushrooms and making their essences and then contributing back. And I'm hoping at this site, people can go, well, you know, like in Australia, we have this mushroom and I prepared it and I worked with people and maybe there's way more out there. For example, Dr. Bach, 1920s, Victorian England, like, you know, he developed this phase and he had his own way of determining, you know, what he basically would do is he would put himself into a particular mental, emotional sphere, into a mood. And then he would walk in the Welsh countryside and the flower that was the antidote for that mood would talk to him. So you can do that. You can do that with mushrooms. How many of you have been in the woods and you come upon a mushroom that you don't even know what its name is, and it doesn't care what its name is, by the way. And DNA is not going to change the name of it. Like, that's so ridiculous. But how many of you see a mushroom and you resonate to that? There's something about that one, right? Yeah, you can feel like, wow, I wish I knew more about that. I wish I could talk to that one more. And just want to share this with you. There's a guy in Czechoslovakia, I think he's passed now, but he would go in the woods and listen, and then he would go home and compose a musical composition based on what that mushroom said to him. So I love that. And so about 10 years ago, I bought this music of the plants machine from England, from Italy. And you're supposed to hook it up to plants and they talk to you. One into the root, one into the leaf, right? And that was fun. I thought, mushrooms. So one into the mycelium, one into the fruiting body. And I've recorded about, I don't know, maybe 40 some. And the trouble is that this machine can play back the vibration the mushroom is sending to you in 110 different ways. Guitar, piano, harp, violin. And so my challenge has been, I hook up the mushroom, I keep tuning into different instruments, and I'm not probably sensitive enough, but once in a while, I hear coming across, and the one that's played on the violin, I start to weep, and I know that's it. That's the one. And so those musical compositions, hopefully I'll finish in the next 3 years or so, and maybe I can just put that online and people can listen to the music of the mushroom. So that might be my next little thing I do. Yeah. Okay, question, yeah?
Do you have a favorite medicinal, either fungi or floral, for cognitive issues like aging or Alzheimer's? Or
well, let's face
Parkinson's?
it. Yeah, so lion's mane is classic, right? But I always say that there's two sides to senile dementia that it's not paying attention to. One is that there's a degree of inflammatory process affecting your brain. And unless you stop that, you're not going to be able to, brain neuron growth factor is not going to be speedy up enough to overcome that constant assault. As I said the other day, maybe, did anybody catch the presentation with Om the other day at all? No.
Yeah.
Oh, phew. I said, you know, 2 Japanese researchers sliced open a beta amyloid plaque. Guess what they found 70% of the time? Herpes simplex virus. Leaky gut, leaky brain. 100% of people who take aspirin, lots of people do, stomach bleeds. 100% of you when you take an aspirin, just be aware of that, including buffered, right? And aspirin also causes brain bleeds. The blood-brain barrier is not impermeable. And so what happens is the virus goes into the brain, the microglial. The brain goes, whoa, warfare, and takes fat, encapsulates the virus to prevent it ever causing more damage. So if any of you, 60% of the population have cold sores and have the virus living at the base of your spine, keep that under control. And it's so cheap and so easy, and pass it on, because I do think it's a contributor. is a teaspoon of lysine powder a day. $25, $20 here probably, in real money, $20 American. You can get from Amazon a big pound of lysine that'll last you a whole year. And some people who have cold sores, they think it's just like inconvenient. No, that virus is nasty. A lot of the herpes virus actually are real problematic. And so the answer is yes, I like that. Amanita muscaria, I used it in homeopathic for the tremor of Parkinson's. Clinical, empirical, just what I observed. 20 of the 24 people I gave Amanita muscaria homeopathic to had total or partial remission of their tremor. Now, the old name for Amanita muscaria in the homeopathic is Agaricus muscaria. Thank you. Yeah, I'm getting my warning. I gotta change my T-shirt and get out of here. But yeah, so any other questions before I have to go? Yeah.
Can you just give a brief overview of essences, what they are, what the goal is with them?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar.
Okay, so mushroom essences are basically for patterns that we, patterns of dysfunction that we learned at a certain stage of our life. It could be post-traumatic, of course, that's really obvious. But it also could be anything from where you've had a confrontation with self or with society in general, where you started to develop a defense mechanism that protected you from harm, like emotional harm, mental harm, etc. And use it because of that pattern, you're not even aware on a conscious level that you're now taking that pattern, and when you speak or interact with other people, you're actually projecting your dysfunction on them. And then they're feeding back their dysfunction, and away we go. And so one of the problems that we have with our society is that not enough people, basically, are cleaning up their own act, taking responsibility for the way that they interact with others on the planet. Because really, it's all about love. On some level, it's all about, we're all in this together. We're all the same. I always say to people, you know, like all these mushrooms, well, that mushroom, gee, that's a different color than that mushroom, but that's named the same. Yeah, we're all Homo sapiens. And we all have different colors, skin, and we all think differently. We all have different philosophical attitudes about things. But we're all just one genus trying to create a loving environment for us so we can all prosper and we all can be our full potential. So that's what it's about. Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Thanks. Actually, I want to piggyback on his question. So, understanding, I read somewhere, I can't remember where, that it's gotten similar effects to psychedelics, not being psychedelics. Is that in the breaking the patterns, bringing awareness, or is there another component to using essence like a psychedelic?
That's a great question. So very often some of our emotional dysfunctions have layers of dysfunction. So it's not like you peel off one and then go, geez, I haven't had that for 20 years ago that happened to me. And then you have to delve into that. So there are different depths to it. But I think it's the brave person who's willing to at least go. And by the way, when you take them, flower essences definitely can help bring light into dark. And so they make you feel better and you can shift some patterns. These are those, mushroom essences are for those who are brave enough to go into the cave, if you know what I mean. And if it's too intense, just cut down the dosage. Like maybe you just drop down to 1 drop a day, right? Or don't even for that one day, and then revisit it. Because it can, if it's a pattern that you've been running for 40 years, it's not gonna resolve itself overnight. It's gonna give you the opportunity to look at the pattern that you've been running, and is it helpful to you, or is it harming you? And is it harming your relationships? Is it harming the community as a whole? And if it is, you know, take the responsibility. It's hard. I mean, you know, it's hard to be truly honest in this world. But you know what? If you're not, who are you? What are you doing? Gotta go. Thank you.
Well, obviously, we thank all of you for being here. You're welcome if you do have questions for us. We will have the essences and have the book, obviously, at our booth, Fruity Bodies, and we're happy to talk more about them. We have lots of experience with it too, and all of this. Yes?
Is your card that you're passing around, is that on y'all's Instagram site, or Facebook site, or social media site?
So we haven't officially launched our mushroom essences online. So Telluride is kind of like the premiere of the essences. Over the next month, we'll be getting up our landing page and updating the website. So all of that information will be there. We'll have a nice, like, you know, a quiz and a module that you can take, like, you know, I'm not sure, I'm feeling this way or I'm feeling this way, and it'll point you in the direction of what essence to be like.
So for now, just take a picture of your booth.
Yeah.
And like the booth. I like the idea of the sisters doing the challenge.
Yeah, that was really cool.
I have to go. That's what staff members.
Yeah, oh yeah. There's a lot more in depth.
So are they made with brandy? What is?
What was that?
Just like mushroom essences, they are brandy that just Thank you, dude. Good to see you.
Yeah, oh yeah. We do, all our information is at the booth. You can, I mean, we're online, we have a website, we have Instagram, we just don't have the essences up yet, but we do have lots of our other things. All the functional mushrooms, that's our, anytime you say something. Yeah, we're across the street by the Sheridan. Yeah. So we're like, yeah. Wyatt here, he's the one, and I made up the one that she so much way. Okay, so if you go by our group, and yeah, somebody else who has one of these that are groups, and have it like the map for you too. Yeah.
If you hit him up, you get a beer.
Is it kind of like
Kind of is.
one drop or more?
Yeah, the recommended is 4, but remember, it feels like too much. It's locked down, so then it's a day off. But, yeah, so it is.
Have you microdose mushrooms?
Yeah.
And have you microdosed the mushroom essence?
So the essences, I've done a lot of shadow work. I'm comfortable, and I've been doing it for a long time now, so I want to know. That's my, I no longer, not that I'm
Shirley,
but I've always seen. Yeah. It's the most beautiful thing. So I want to go physical taste. Yeah, well, I always get I don't know that.
I know, I was taking off, look we should turn on our gas. We're getting on
And even, microdosing, you said, you know, it is a lot of that. My mindset is good. And if I'm able to, then I can sit with whatever comes up. If I'm going through something, just saying, well, this isn't the time for a ceremony, or this isn't the time to do work, I'll wait, because I got this to work with right now, so that's how I would.
But you wouldn't recommend the essence over the fruity, the psilocybin?
Oh, I would say they're both great, and I would say I would do both, and you can do them in conjunction, you can do them, because I don't know what, like, when you might do it. but a lot of people go during the day.
Yes.
And then essence is easy at night, so it will, because as the book states.
As the nighttime.
Yes, it's a nighttime, so, and if you do 4 drops before you go to sleep, that would, and like a dream journal, you know, even if you're not doing, like, that's what came up when I did my very first one. And the same with my partner, like the dreams that were like, oh wow, I don't normally dream, but these are, you know, and so that's how, so that's why taking it at night. But some people are really big meditators and they meditate an hour a day, every day about the same time. And I've had people that have used them right before meditating, and then they come out of the meditation and have like that. Another person, their meditation was just walking, they lived on the river, and they just, every day, they would just take a hike along the river. They would do their drops before that hike, it was a daily thing for them, and they would bring a journal with them. At a certain point, stuff would be coming to them, they'd sit by the river, on a rock by the river, and write stuff up.
What a life.
Right, I know, be able to do that every day, I know. I live on a river now, the Mississippi, so that's, I don't get to walk that along as much as I would like to.
And then the flower essence, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, flower essences are amazing too, it's just like he said, they're different, it works different, so I would say like you know, like Robert
Different but
said.
similar.
Yeah.
That was my introduction to vibrational medicine, was flower essences. Go on Google, look up Dr. Bach, Edward Bach, and his journey and how essences really became, it's fascinating work.
Yeah, and like he said, they bring light to the darkness, whereas the essences take you to, like, in the darkness. So you're actually sitting with the discomfort, or sitting with the things that, you know, it really, like, brings truth in things. So, you know, I say, like, that's where the difference, but there's still the same exact type of
Similar
medicine.
concept.
Right, because it's vibrational.
And addressing the ailment, if you will.
And you make them the same way, except one is made under the mushroom essence is made under the lunar, you know, under the moon, and the flower essence, they're made in the sun. So, but
Solar
otherwise,
photosynthesis, and then the lunar is essentially the mushroom in the shadow.
yeah, so, yeah, but they're basically the very same medicine, but different sides to it.
And you said that you initially started your healing with reishi.
Did, so,
Before the mushroom, before even the flower essence?
oh yeah.
Oh, really?
So that
Okay.
was, reishi is the mushroom that changed my life, saved my life, even more than my other psychedelic experiences. And, I was talking briefly on it, I was really sick as a child, and I missed a lot of school, I was on all sorts of pharmaceuticals, I don't really come from a very financially stable background, and I saved up as much money as I could for some reishi supplements. And I tried a handful of them, and it was probably over the course of 2 or 3 months, and they weren't working for me, and I was like, well, this really sucks, like, I just wasted all
Saves
this
up all
money
your
on
money,
something.
yeah.
So a couple months went by, my symptoms were coming back, I was on pharmaceuticals again, and I heard, or I was introduced to Robert, some of his work, and started looking for, like Ken was, looking for a really solid mushroom product, and I happened to find someone that had a really, just a solid product, a really good product that was actually extracted, like some of the seminars that we give, and these mushrooms need to be extracted, not just a hot tea. And I found a really good product, I saved up some money, I took it for about 2 months, and all my symptoms just started going away. And I was like, holy shit, there's something to these mushrooms. And I started buying all Robert's books, started making all my own tinctures when I was in school, and that's what led me to the functional mushroom world. And from there, I had my first psychedelic experience, which came with a whole, another array of things. And that's when I got into flower essences. The girl I was dating at the time, her mom gives talks at Omega Institute and all these places across the world for meditation, and she was really into flower essences. So she gave me a handful of them from Dr. Bach. I was just, it changed my life. My depression was going away, my anxiety was going away, and I attribute it to a combination of functional medicine, functional mushrooms, and flower essences. So when Robert wrote his book, I was just like, that was it for me.
You got it all.
And I will say, so to me, because after working with Robert and knowing the depth of how to make really good medicine, that's actually, has efficacy, right? And bringing in the alchemy, which he does, and astrology, and all the things that his wife wrote. Roger is an alchemist. Roger is, to me, like, a young version of Robert Rogers and his truly love. At 30 years old, it's okay if I say your age, at 30 years old, like to be and continue to work on, and that's what we're all about, like working on ourselves, continue to see where we're not being who we want to be in our business, our relationship, or our to the planet, anything. And going there and doing that work so that we can be loved. And the way Roger makes because Roger is the one who has the lab and is doing all the products that we make, the functional mushrooms. That's all in Roger's work, and he brings that energy, the alchemy, all these levels, and that energy, because everything, understanding, because this is what I had learned throughout 25 years of my own work, then working with Robert, like how everything matters, like who's growing our food, not just the soil, right? Like energy and everything.
What country is it coming from?
Exactly. What's
Talking to the.
yes? And are you bringing right? Is this just about profit? Because we live in a capitalistic world where everything is about extracting and being all this. No, like if you like when I grew mushrooms, as Roger said, I had a company before, and like my mushrooms were my children, my babies. Like every single one of them. Like
Talk to
I love them, and it was a passion to be with the mushrooms. And then when I bring them to the chefs. So I was in Chicago Mushroom Company. I'd bring them to the chefs, and I'd open the cakes I made for them, and you would just see the entire staff, everyone coming around, and you could feel it and tell. And they said they never had mushrooms like that. And like, I know that makes a difference. I think about it in the food that I eat, who I'm getting it from. I want to know my growers. I want to know the people that are doing it. And that's what Roger brings in the lab, because if you're getting a medicine, who's actually doing it? Where is it being made? What are all the steps and process? The person who's doing our distribution right now, she writes a personalized note in everything. Like she literally, everything is intentional. So everyone that we're doing, so same thing with where you're getting, that I tell people, like, think about where you're getting everything from and what's going in from every step of the way. And that's what Robert is about. You can tell when you listen to him talk. I mean, this is his life. And same with
Robert is so humble and doesn't, like, he just brushes it off, but he's, when I say he's intelligent, it's an understatement.
Yeah.
Like, when he was up here talking, he could give an 8-hour seminar standing there, and it would take him months to tell you the information that's just wrapped up in his head. It's unbelievable.
Because a question will trigger
Yeah.
a whole nother hour.
You know that saying, spot it, got it? All right, well, this is Roger. So Roger is also, I call him the humble genius alchemist. Because he is sort of similar. Like Roger is that for sure, and has all those years of experience. But I want to just say, like, humble, like it takes one to know one, and Roger's very humble too. So he won't. I can talk about him because he won't talk about himself.
Where do you work at?
Currently, the lab and production space is in Massachusetts. So I've been coming to Telluride since 2015. Just to share, like, my Telluride experience has been monumental. I was working for a farm in college. He sent me here on a whim. I had no idea what the hell Telluride was. Never even heard of Telluride. And I was sitting in a talk at the Opera House with Trad Cotter. I was just like, holy shit, like,
Yeah,
there's
right.
a whole world I can
Fascinating.
Trad offered me an intern, and I interned with Trad and worked with them for a little while.
He's
And
amazing too.
I came home, and yesterday I was on a business panel, and I was up there talking with Trad and with William Thea Brown, who I used both of their books when I was in school and have grown from them. So Telluride was monumental in my mushroom journey, my experience here, and it's just been really an honor. Even just to have conversations like this, we love come by the booth. We love talking.
Yeah.
Well, to be with Robert, I mean, two of y'all partnering with him gives such validity to your own brilliance and your own stories. And
I'll never forget.
what other growers have that?
Right.
You know?
Right, and he wouldn't just work with it. That was the thing. Is like that's one of the things I respected about him when I first met him in person in 2016 or 17. It was, he could easily have made a lot of money putting his name to a company and just getting it. But he said, I won't do that on that because I'm only going to be about the science. I'm only going to, and he would never sell out. And I always respected that because he's like, it wasn't about capitalism and trying to profit off of any, any of
He'll
that.
tell you how it is.
Yeah.
And you won't be shy about it.
Yeah.
It's clear you guys have a similar value system, right?
Yeah.
We do,
Bonding
that's what's
together.
great.
And I think
Yeah.
that's
Tell me
what
about
brought
the
the
booth.
three of us
Thank
together.
Yeah, that
Totally,
was-
you can feel that
Yeah.
bind,
And
yeah,
I'll
it's
never-
really cool.
I'll never forget, we were up at, Ken wanted to kind of
I wanted
get in
to-
touch with Robert, and we went up to the Upper Olympic Peninsula Fungi Fest in Washington State last October.
Yeah,
Yeah, last October. And I had made, using his book, I had his book for years, you know, and I had not made my own essence. So out near my house in central Massachusetts, we don't really get Amanita. You have to go up to like Vermont and Maine into the woods. And I was in central Mass, and there's this one pine tree that's on the outside of the apartment complex that's near my house. And I was out there one day, and it was full of yellow Amanitas, and I was like, this is a sign. So I picked them that week. Next week was a full blood moon in Sagittarius. I made an essence with that in my yard. We brought that up to the Olympic Peninsula Fungi Fest. And
I would just say, let me just say, so I knew, because I was friends with Robert, I kept in touch with him and everything since that workshop I went to. And so, but I knew, I was so excited for Roger and Robert to meet and know, and for them to try essence. But I just knew the two peas in a pod, I was like, they're just gonna hit it out. So I intentionally, that's why, it's a long, we're East Coast, I'm in the Midwest. And by the way, just a side note, we can talk about this after this story, but we are centralizing in the Midwest, in Illinois, and we got this beautiful, property with ponds and a stream, and
Nice.
we're gonna have our lab, and we're gonna do workshops.
Outside of
Cool.
Chicago.
We're trying to create community.
2 hours west of Chicago.
Yeah.
West.
Yeah, and an hour east of the Mississippi River. So, but we are trying to create community around these type of things, so that we can bring more love and light, all this. So, I just wanted to say, but anyways, so we all, I was like, this is my plan, getting the two of them together. Robert didn't know, surprised him, and then you can
Yeah,
tell the rest.
we went to his talk, and you obviously remembered Ken. He was super excited that we were there, and I gave him the essence. I brought little vials that we could give out at the festival because I just wanted people to try it because I was using it for integration. I had just had a life-changing psychedelic experience, and the Amanita essence was that was my entry into the mushroom essences themselves. And when we were there, Robert tried it, and I'll never forget the look on his face. He was just lost for words. He couldn't, words weren't coming out, and you could just see it in his eyes. And he just nodded his head, and he was like, we should work together. It was so unplanned, or it was.
It was amazing. And I knew, that was, it was good.
But for the next couple of days, Robert would, he would seek us out, and
He was wearing our hat all over the festival. Yeah,
it was pretty surreal.
Good
Like
friends.
I said, I used his papers when I were his writing in college, so it was like being here and having this
Yeah.
conversation with Robert. And I
That's gotta be
was pinch
surreal.
myself
Yeah.
constantly. Like, this is actually happening.
Yeah, well, and you deserve, because he does, I've been around the mushroom world for quite a while, and there's not, there's a lot of great people. I don't want, incredible people in the mushroom world. But, unfortunately, like any business or any industry, capitalism gets it. And Roger is so North Star. He's worked really hard to do what he's done and build it. And it was the honor. And I know Robert, he feels that. That's why, like you said, doing it with Robert says a lot about you and about us and about him. This to be able to do this, because this is his baby. The essence is one of his babies. He's not going to just put that trust.
He spent way more than 20. When he says 26 years, that was just compiling. I mean, his whole life when it started with mushrooms is all of that knowledge came in. He wouldn't have been writing about this if he didn't understand mushrooms. So that predates anything that he was doing with his clinical practice.
So we're excited. We're excited to teach it. We'll be doing workshops. Because I love teaching. I taught people how to grow mushrooms.
We give talks all over
We do
the
all,
country. It's definitely our passion is education.
Well, the community element's really
It builds
It is.
beautiful, yeah.
It's what it's about.
Yeah. That's the mycelium
Exactly.
essence, right?
It's
It's
our
connecting.
number one thing. When we had that 7-8 hour introduction talk to each other, and we were just like, how do we, there's a ton of mushroom companies out there, and I'm from central Massachusetts. The only community you have is if your kids play Little League or you go to church on Sundays or something like that. So there isn't any community, and everyone's kind of, unfortunately, I don't know if he's from Massachusetts, but there's a lot of just like nose in the air people
Yeah.
that very judgmental. The culture is not very healthy, and that's what I grew up in and around. So having this more of a solid platform like we do now, and being able to create community, and the people that we've pulled in that work do shipping for us, that are here vending while we're able to give talks, everyone is just so aligned and on the same page. And the more we have conversations like this, like the more we get to meet you guys and like build that kind of community aspect, and the more people will come back to Telluride and share these conversations with each other. That's what fuels me, because I didn't have that growing up. So this is just like really a dream come true to be able to build community.
Where are you all from?
We're from
Arizona.
Phoenix area.
Oh,
so,
wow.
yeah.
Awesome.
We've been coming for about 5-6 years now.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome, that's
Yeah.
great. Did
Pretty
you
busy.
fly into,
We drive.
No,
oh, you drive, how far of a drive is it?
8-10 hours.
Oh, that's nice.
we usually stop over in Flagstaff.
Oh,
I have friends there.
I didn't realize how close to it.
Yeah, it's
that's
pretty
great.
close.
Yeah, because I drove from Illinois, and it was not that.
That is a
Yeah.
yeah.
On top of that, he was at my house, picked up all the essences we made, drove from Massachusetts to Illinois, like 17 hours,
Oh my gosh.
dropped everything off, picked stuff up. A day later, drove another 17, 18
So
hours.
I've been, yeah.
Road tripping.
Yeah, so 8 hours.
I'm like, oh, 8 hours. Well, just a quick skip over there.
Another
Yeah.
type of tripping.
How about all of you?
I'm from Denver.
Yeah.
It's my first mushroom fest.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
but
so-
me and her went to college in Durango, so
Oh, nice.
yeah, this area's
So
cool.
you're familiar.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a really special area, Colorado. for sure.
Seriously, it is.
Yeah. Anyone else on that?
I'm from New Mexico.
Oh, really? Where in New
Yes.
Mexico?
I'm living in Albuquerque currently, but I've kind of circled through.
Yeah.
both
I
of
actually
those
love,
states.
that's one of my
We
favorite
were just
states.
talking about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's so special.
I think that's the thing I was thinking about during his talk, was talking about not being able to like remediate the healthcare system, but thinking also how like wellness can be sort of like become like an insular thing, and how do we like engage in accessibility around this kind of medicine. And I'm glad that you guys teach people how to make it rather than just sell it, because that really,
I've
That's
been
Robert's,
very,
that's Robert's whole thing too, as much as like you're working
Teaching
with
how
them
to
and
make
bringing it here so that people
Yeah.
can buy it, but that was my introductory, was making in essence. And Robert
Yeah.
gives you that knowledge
In the book.
and just in any talk that you attend that he ever gives, you will take something away, guaranteed, that will be beneficial. Like when he was talking about the aspirin and the bleeding, and like I'm surprised he didn't mention, so like he recommends using a pine bark extract with curcumin. I forget at which milligram dose it is, but he has alternatives for everything he's used, and his other books are just this was monumental for me. But his Fungal Pharmacy is probably the most famous book that I know of anyone that's really into mushrooms. He wrote the Human Clinical Trials, which is a compilation of like all the most recent data.
that's more, that's more like, the fungal pharmacy has a little more of like all, but the one that Roger just mentioned about the clinical trials, that's very like, you'll see all the clinical trials.
But Robert has a lot of experience with so like functional mushrooms. We talk like reishi, lion's mane, cordyceps, chaga, turkey tail, maitake, shiitake, and those are like the big 7 everyone hears.
Right.
Robert's books and the depth of his knowledge for other functional mushrooms that aren't necessarily known as functional, like, because a lot of these mushrooms have amazing qualities. They're just not necessarily been studied, but he has like clinical proof working with handfuls of other people on these mushrooms. So those were like, we talk about it, we're just scratching the surface with mushrooms.
So,
Like, we know maybe a couple percentage of what's actually out there.
Sure.
but making it
That's
accessible
fascinating.
is really important, and that was big for me, like even in psychedelics. I wanted people to learn how to grow their own mushrooms, not just, not just because obviously it's way less expensive than, going out and buying them, but like you put your own energy in it. Like they become yours. So if you're working, doing microdosing or anything, like thinking about growing your own and making that like this relationship that you have with them. And the same thing with food. And when I had Chicago Mushrooms, I had people coming in. I've helped a lot of people start mushroom companies. So I just wanted to like teach people, like, come on in and spend a few days working or volunteer, and I'll show you everything. And it's because I want like people. I think there's nothing greater than to be able to empower people to grow their own food, their own medicine. And food is medicine.
Take some power back.
Take our power back into our own hands and our own communities. And like that's, yes, you know, we can make it easy and accessible. That's the other part is we don't, even though, and that's why we put, say, people and planet ahead of profits is, you know, yes, it takes a lot to do what we do, and we do third-party testing so people can know that it's safe. So we spend a lot, but we want the products to be also for those that maybe can't or don't want to be growing their own or making their own, that at least they're not paying an arm and a leg, and they can trust what we've got, yes.
Right.
And those are the, so we keep our prices, you know, even the essences are only $15 here to pay. So like, we want people to be able to use this and not have barriers, so
Right.
it is, you know, we
That's
think
why,
about
like,
all those
I walk into the Whole Foods that's near my house, and I look at, you know, like even Bach flower remedies, like some of them are expensive.
Yeah.
Even at like $30-$40 for these tiny bottles. So, you know, we have these little 15 milliliter bottles, and each one has 90 servings. So if you're using it for, you know, a 28-day cycle, this one's a little wrinkly, but I can pass that around so everyone can see. But you know, you're getting, you know, your full, at least your full first 28 days, and then you have another almost over 2 months of dosing in there to kind of play with it during meditation or a hike or a walk, or to do another, you know, full cycle. So we really wanted to make it economical and affordable for people to use, because I'm a huge believer, because you know, you've heard my story now, I didn't come from a financially stable background, and there should be no paywall in front of people being able to access something it should be made affordable. And that's, I worked in the cannabis space for a while in Massachusetts, horribly corporate entity, especially in Massachusetts. It's taxed through the roof. There's like a 30 to 50% tax. So if you're spending $60, you're walking out with a $110 bill in Massachusetts for cannabis. But you can go buy, you know, a 30 rack of beer for what, $9. So there's just this weird, you know, discrepancy between affordability and cost with these medicines, and it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
So we really have tried to price things in a way that, you know, we can continue doing what we're doing, but people also have access to a really high quality product.
Yeah, but like I said, when we have our, you know, you guys haven't heard from where all you're from too, but when we have this space, when we're up and going, and we want to have these workshops, and we want to have people, so that we are creating this accessibility where people can take it to their own communities and do stuff too. So, where are you all from?
Arkansas.
Arkansas? Oh,
Kansas.
in Kansas?
Nice.
All right, that's Midwest.
Pretty close to us.
Yeah, that's not far from have family in Kansas.
Is it your first time here, or you guys been here?
Yeah, first time.
Oh, great.
How you guys are doing?
Man, it's so overwhelming. There's just too many conflicts of, you know, what to go see.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part.
Okay.
I
Nail
have
down
a
your
quick
schedule.
question. I'm trying to grow outside Amadagoricus and Kingstropharia,
Yep.
culinary. Do they have any medicinal, that, to your knowledge?
So Kingstropharia it's in the Agaricus family, so a lot of mushrooms, and I would have to double check. Robert's book would be fantastic. The
Okay.
Fungal Pharmacy, I can't recommend that book enough. I've
Okay.
recommended
Will
that
do.
book for the last 10 years to everybody. I know
Do
that
you have that book at your?
we don't, I want to say that the bookstore in town, I think they
Oh,
do.
okay.
It's on, I think, the West Colorado
Yeah.
app, where the banner is. But Amadou that has a wide variety. It's been used for, I think, by the Siberian people for thousands of years. It's antibacterial, antimicrobial. They actually used to hollow it out, basically, make felt out of it, and they would carry embers. They would take an ember from their fire, and they would store it in it, and they would carry it, like, you know, hundreds of miles to their next spot, and the amber, the coals would still be in there, and they could just relight it. So it's fascinating history with that mushroom. And Kingstropharia, if you haven't grown on wood chips, it's delicious. So it's one of my favorite. It's super easy to grow edible mushrooms.
And I would say all mushrooms are medicinal at some point. And eating them, like the health benefits of eating them, it's different than medicinal. You're not going to get the same medicinal by eating them. But the difference is you are getting incredible fiber, low cal, really healthy.
Great vitamins.
So for your we know that the importance of our microbiome now that have been neglected so long, and the fiber from mushrooms is incredible. So the more you can have in your diet, if you love mushrooms and you can grow them and eat them and cook them, like I'd say the more the better. It is medicinal in that respect because the fiber, having that good fiber with no cholesterol and low cal, no fat, like it's one of the best things I think you can eat. It's not going to give you, and some of them have higher protein, like oysters have higher protein than others, but it's not necessarily a high protein food. You get some vitamins, you know, there's some vitamin D's, there's a lot of different things, but I think we underestimate what mushrooms do have for us, because you know we share a lot of the same DNA as mushrooms. I don't know if you guys know, but we have like over 60% of the same.
We share more DNA with fungi than
With
we
fungi
do
than
some of the
any-
animal kingdom.
Animal plant, yeah. And so the way that mushrooms grow and get their nutrients out of things that plants don't get, even though there's a symbiotic relationship with plants, but they can break down things that plants can't break down. And then we get to consume those minerals and those things. Even if they're a trace, it's enough to feed what our bodies need because of the similarities between mushrooms and humans. So I say, like, you know, the more mushrooms you can eat, and again, remember, I came from a gourmet, you know, that was the area I was in, was, you know, using mushrooms to feed people and like just racket. So I really studied that and understanding the value. But I do want to say, like Roger talks about, you need to be able to get the medicinal, some of the active compounds. You couldn't eat enough mushrooms to, like, the amount of lion's mane you'd have to eat in order to, and lion's mane is delicious, but I could never eat enough. You know, we talk about we have some concentrate chocolate and gummies, and one piece is like 5 to 6 grams of dried lion's mane, which is way more.
Especially lion's mane, you need
tons
extracted to get those benefits.
To get the actual, yeah. So that's why I say, like, there's different medicinal values. You will get a lot of value out of the eating them, but you won't get the same. So there's two different things, but you won't get the fiber and the other things, some of the other things that the food, eating the food, the mushroom, you get that you don't get that in the whatever.
The reason behind it, so the same compound that your fingernails and shellfish is made out of is called chitin, and the cell walls of pretty much every mushroom is made of chitin. And the chitin acts as a natural defense mechanism for it's basically an indigestible fiber. So that's why you always want to cook mushrooms. You don't necessarily want to eat like raw mushrooms on a salad bar and stuff like that. Your body just passes it out. Some people experience indigestion, some people don't. If I eat uncooked mushrooms, my stomach bloats like absolutely crazy. I get really just horribly uncomfortable. So I have to make sure mushrooms are always cooked for myself. But when you introduce heat or use like an ultrasonic technology to break the cell walls, heat is the easiest one. So whether you're cooking it or doing a hot extraction like we do, that breaks apart the cell walls of the chitin, and it unlocks all of the bioavailable compounds and nutrients that are inside of that mushroom. So the raw mushrooms, it just passes right out of you as fiber. But if you heat them, then you're going to get all those vitamins and all those minerals that are stored inside the cell wall.
Yeah. So yeah,